Okay, okay, just spitballing some, some ideas about um, an astrology board game. So, if we were, I see kind of two possibilities because there's kind of two versions of this. I've kind of, they've been a little bit interesting to me. One is, what if there's a there's a RPG type system that was sort of astrology based. So instead of dexterity, strength, whatever, you would have uh, stats based on the zodiac. Um, that's pretty functional, especially when we talk about sidereal. Um, on the other hand, um, maybe having regular stats and then just zodiacal stats on top of it could be good. Although I think the intrigue of there's a certain intrigue to having zodiacal stats for an RPG because the zodiacal energies and the planetary energies are the sort of the resonances that make up our reality. So or modify it anyways. The Earth also has a resonance. Every living being has is vibrating and producing vibrations and manifesting things and whatnot. Um, so yeah, I'll start with the sort of Parcheesi version first. Um, so the idea here is the way that over lifetimes one will basically move one zodiac sign. I think it's the ascendant that will move zodiac signs. I've seen in one or two past lives where the planets were kind of similar, but the ascendant kept moving. Um, so yeah, the ascendant. I think the ascendant changes the setting of the planetary positions. One, one, one. Um, so yeah, that's interesting. I think it's a little more complicated than that. For example, I'll feel souls want to be birthed through me, and um, especially one is very insistent about now. Um, I'm not particularly, I'm not controlled by lust, so it doesn't really work. That being said, if we're talking a lot of the planets, every 1, 2, 3 years, the planets are going to be similar enough. They're going to be kind of enough onto what the person had in a previous lifetime, or just sort of their multi-life sort of strategy from their soul or their higher self or whatever. So perhaps there can be some variance because I feel like there's about 2-3 month window where this one particular soul will really want to press and be born. I don't know a lot about this. I know about ascendant moving one sign through the lifetimes. I don't know about the other planets and how that would work. I suppose I'll learn someday. I don't know. So there could be some Parcheesi like, sorry, or I forget the name of the other game that has like the bubble in the middle. Yeah, so circling the board. Yeah, like sorry basically is the most common version of the game, but that game goes all the way back to like the Mayans at least. They had a board game about the sun. So yeah, but instead of the sun doing it with the zodiac signs, would naturally be much more powerful because the zodiacal energies are more powerful than the planetary energies by far. If anything, the planets are just acting as a bridge between us and the zodiac intelligences, the stars, the outer gods. So, Yeah, that could be fun. Perhaps there's some, um, there, maybe the spaces would be like, okay, so I'm thinking a zodiac wheel, and then the spaces would weave like a labyrinth through each sign. So like you would go from one sign to the next, and then you'd have to weave through a little labyrinth of spaces. And then you go to the next sign, and then another labyrinth, and then the next sign, and then another labyrinth, etc., etc. Something like that could be cool. And then it's sort of like trying to find yourself um, through the zodiac, through the infinite times, basically. And then maybe it's like once you get to Pisces, you have a chance to get out, which is like a victory condition, or probably the only victory condition. But like if you fail, you have to start all over. That could be funny. I'm not sure if that's true. I think that every single zodiacal sign is its own ascension process, but I think from the perspective of like a board game, um, and I think Pisces is probably the easiest ascension problem or process. Then it's like, yeah, you can have it there, and it makes for a good board game, and it gets people thinking about things. I think most people would probably get ascension through Pisces, but yeah. Anyways, okay, moving on. The RPG idea. So the fun of this could be, you know, certain like Scorpio and Aries and Sagittarius are going to be more creating fighting conditions. It could be a role-playing game that could be heavy on the role part, you know. So it could be. I mean, D&D is popular. It could even be a system that's not, you know, attached to anything, but you can make like a pseudo D&D, and then have it be totally zodiacal instead of, you know, armor class and all these things. I think another thing that'd be interesting is to have pre-designed characters that would be very weird and symbolic looking. Perhaps even mythological beings, but with a little bit extra weirdness, just to give it this sort of to be a little. Sometimes when something's not exactly on the nose of being a common occult symbol or something, but the symbol's still there, it's encoded with the symbol, but it's not per se the symbol, or the symbol is encoded with something else. Like I'm thinking, you know, what if you have like a goat man that's like also a cyborg? Okay, so it's not completely on the nose of being Capricorn / you know, like some kind of Baphomet type deal, but it's like adding the extra detail, the extra, you know, sort of permeating it with an extra concept, then makes it sort of a new thing. And I think I think that's fairly powerful in situations like this to do. And I think that when everything's symbolic and it's a little bit it's just the symbolism. I think when something is just the symbolism, it can actually be harder to work with than if the symbolism is itself somewhat altered. Sometimes the alteration can be really meaningful to someone, or, you know, just it can be very intuitive on your part without you even realizing it. I know for me, I created stuff and I didn't think I was being intuitive. I thought I was just, you know, mashing things together, and it still turned out to be, you know, basically more intuitive than I thought. So, yeah, I think pre-designed characters in that sense could be cool. And then some scenarios written out to be like zodiacal, and there could be infinite of those, but I think especially the big key here is it's with D&D it's very straightforward. It's just you know, you hit someone with your sword, you roll to see how accurately and hard it hits. That's pretty straightforward. Once upon a time, that was, really fascinating and different. But I think this is then a next step of thinking about it, to get people thinking energetically more than physically. So I think that's something that is really powerful and could be of great use, to basically teaching people how to not be dumb or something. I don't know. Not to be muggles. I don't know. So yeah. Feel like there's more to say here. Items in the game should be all symbolic. See, I think this would maybe be an RPG, but I think it'd be a better video game idea than like how D&D has inspired many video games, or many video games have been made more or less based off of a D&D or D&D-like system. I think maybe this idea of astrology-based stats and an RPG might be better in a video game, just because I think most people wouldn't get it. I think in a video games have such a powerful ability to Trojan horse ideas because it's there happening visually in front of you. I think it's a lot to ask someone who doesn't understand things to just, pick up a booklet of, a role-playing module or role-playing handbook and just imagine it. That can become quite esoteric within itself, and I think the point now is to make a lot of these esoteric things more understood. Okay, esoteric will always be esoteric, but I think it's better to sort of acclimate people to thinking esoterically. You know what I mean? I think if it's too hard, it's easy enough to get people thinking esoteric with, something on TV, something in a video game. Let's face it, people aren't as big of readers as they used to be. So that would be about okay. I think the next step here to talk about is what would the stats actually mean, or what would they look like? So probably based on something like I Ching. So have a hexagon or a hexagram, and each side. So the sun is going to be the overall level, and the rest of it is going to be this coming off of the sides. So in the middle, the person will have the level, which will be pictured by a sun and various, the sun will be like smaller or bigger, I guess, and maybe it'll say something like as if how developed the soul is almost. And then the ascendant should also like the degree amount. So it's all going to be based on degree amount, because degree amount is the maturity of the planet, of the of the point, whatever. So sun would be overall like effectiveness of the character, and then I think ascendant would also be somehow like that. So there'd be both, I think, unless someone wanted to do a 7-sided polygon, a septagon, or a septagram. But I think the hexagon or hexagram will have more interest visually, just because everyone loves hexagons, and also the I Ching, of course. So, and then the other 6 planets will just sort of be including Moon. So let's see, Moon, Mercury, Venus. Mercury, Venus stats should be the ones that are basically um, coming into play the most, because in life you use Mercury and Venus the most. Moon, I'm not sure what moon should be. Moon should be something with in consciousness, and maybe more. The thing is, sun and moon are kind of similar in the way that they are very much formative to who you are, right? But I think moon is maybe more. It's more the way things are gonna. Oof. The way I see it is sun is like ego and moon is like id. So I think moon is a little more intrinsic to what's in you, and it's also going to come out more in more simple things. Like, you know, someone's ego, you would almost have to know them to understand what they are or to see anything of it. But when it comes to just like basic consciousness, which you see with the moon, you see that all the time. So I think that would have more of a formative effect on, you know, the gameplay. I'm not sure what it would be exactly, but it could be almost like a subclass. That would make a lot of sense. Like your sun sign and your ascendant sign and the moon sign are all different classes of things. And then, but the moon should be halfway between being a class and being like an ability set. And then Mercury and Venus should be ability sets. And then, and it shouldn't be a fighting game exactly. Maybe a little bit, but like it should be more like almost choose your own adventure or something. Or you could even do it like be a weird, almost Sims-like RPG where you're just watching characters do, you know, interact or something. That could be interesting. There's a lot of possibilities of what to do with such a thing, but the class system, that sort of game system, would really be something special. Okay, so I said the first 3 planets besides Sun. So let's see, the other 3 would be so Mars should also be an ability set, but I think Mars is also going to be halfway between an ability set and also making like your choices for you a little bit. That's because Mars it's the Martian impulse. It's, you know, your drive to do something. You don't necessarily have control over it. You can deny your Martian impulse, but you probably don't want to do that because, you know, you need that to actually make headway in life and stuff. So you just have to harmonize that to whatever you're doing. So I think I would be halfway between what I said with, you know, an ability set with Mercury, Venus, and what I am going to talk about with the Dharmic planets, Saturn and Jupiter. Also, one other thing about Mercury and Venus. Mercury is alchemizing, and Venus is manifesting. So the power set should be along those lines. And then, okay, so with Jupiter and Saturn, I think this would be a little bit like in, what is it? Fallout New Vegas, where like a lot of, like your choices affect the world basically, but it's like this setting of, you know, what your Saturn and Jupiter condition is, they'll kind of make a lot of choices for you or open up whatever opportunities for you or whatever. And then yeah, I guess that's all the planets. I think North Node and South Node are so complicated that shouldn't be something in a first iteration. I think it's also something that regular people don't understand. And I'm personally not interested in making something for total nerds. I think also that just it would be better to make something with the 7 planets and then move to the lunar nodes and the generational planets later. Otherwise, it's just too much. And I think if you try and be too ambitious sometimes with new ground, like you kind of need to experiment with it and see where it goes. And I think also what I'm talking about now with the 7 planets, if someone actually made a video game like this, I think that it could be one of the next big things. Okay, it'd be a little niche, but maybe not, if it was executed correctly. Um, I mean, we're not in a time where everyone wants to watch the same thing or play the same thing or whatever, so much as it used to be, at all, because, now's the era of the indie filmmaker, the indie game developer, whatever, but it could be, I think, it could be something that really hits with a certain audience, and that could be a massive success in our time, as we could expect in our time. Change the world a little bit. I think if the idea is a little bit overcooked, kind of overbaked with, just too much astrology inside baseball, it's going to be the niche thing that a couple super astrology nerds really like,